everybody, this is Pitchfork Black here, and welcome to Discussion Reviews episode 39, in which today I'm going to be reviewing Players by Terrance. Without further ado, let us begin this review by taking a look at the presentation of this Doctor Who book. So we have 50 years TARDIS logo, Players, Terrance Dicks, BBC Doctor Who, and this is one of the 50th anniversary collection reprints. And then for the sort of piece of artwork for the cover itself, with these we have a sort of patchy sort of I guess I should say almost sort of leather like effect with sort of explosion here, shrapnel, Sixth Doctor in his famous Vengeance of Varos pose, which looks a little crude, a World War soldier and some sort of like air raid light beams and World War light beams and stuff. Very nice cover overall. I don't think it's as good as the original, but it's still pretty good. Then we have for the spine, Doctor Who, picture of the Sixth Doctor, Players, Terrance Dicks, number 6, as this is the 6th 50th anniversary reprint book, BBC Books. And then for the back we have the sort of indicator of which book this is on the sort of wavelength of the 50th anniversary reprints. Check out my review on 10 Little Aliens if you want a good explanation of that. Players, synopsis, the Doctor Who 50th anniversary collection, 11 classic adventures, 11 brilliant writers, 1 incredible Doctor. Prices and stuff down here, and sort of websites and copyright guff, and then barcode and an FSC company logo down there. Then for the interior of this book we have Doctor Who Players, various or the other titles available in the Players range, or not the Players range, the 50th anniversary reprint range. Can't get my words straight today. BBC Doctor Who Players, BBC Books. Then we have various copyright guff and introduction. And then after the introductions we have dedication for Steve Cole, an editorial raft in the stormy sea of Deadline, Credo, and chapter 1. This is a 306 page long Doctor Who book spread across let's just have a quick little look here, 30 chapters and an epilogue. Then there we've got an advertisement for the next 50th anniversary reprint, and then a advertisement for the encyclopedia, which is now available for the iPad at the time this book was published, which was all the way back in 2013. General consensus on this Sixth Doctor adventure is very positive, with an average rating of 3.75 out of 5 on Goodreads, mostly with 3-star reviews and upwards, with minimal negativity. Do I agree or disagree with the general consensus? Let us find out. The War Games. Just by saying that story title, probably everybody's ears just pricked up, as it's such a love story. And if you are one of the ones whose ears just pricks up, then your ears will go about as pointy as an Alsatian's when I say that this continues the War Games and transforms it into a trilogy, maybe even a complete other series with like loads of other books. We're only with the past Doctor Adventure novel World Game. Terrance Dicks is arguably the most iconic Doctor Who writer for introducing the Time Lords in the War Games, and it's almost as if he's recognised that the War Games is his most important story, and did the ultimate fan service by making it into a trilogy with this novel and the following book World Game, which I'll hopefully review sometime in the future. This trilogy, of which I personally like to nickname the Game Trilogy. Now this sounds all good and exciting, however I will warn you that the continuity of this book can be insane. In hopes to explain the continuity of this book and the trilogy, let me start off this review by talking about its continuity. The War Games, as you would expect, is the founder and the start of the whole thing. Simple as for that story. Players is a sequel to the War Games, and is also a sequel to a short story within this book, which for the sake of simplicity I'm just going to call the War Games B, which it segues into using the thought device from Wheel in Space, as well as being a sequel to World Game, I believe, as World Game takes place immediately after the War Games. So I think this is at the very end of the trilogy almost, even though it was the first one to come out, so in a way it's sort of like a goth opera Blood Harvest type thing, where it's a where Blood Harvest is a prequel for us but a sequel for the Doctor, that sort of thing, with what Terrance Dicks and Paul Cornell did with those two Doctor Who books from the Virgin Missing Adventure and Virgin New Adventure ranges. The War Games B, as you would expect, is obviously a sequel to the War Games, and most likely to World Game, which is set immediately after the War Games. However, it is a prequel to Players, as it does foreshadow two separate events within that book, or this book rather, and takes place timeline-wise before Players. World Game, of which I haven't actually read yet, but from what I can gather is a sequel to all of the previous stories. The BBC 8th Doctor adventure, Endgame, I'd also quickly like to mention, is most likely a part of the trilogy, as well as being part of another arc known as the Earth Doctor, known as the Earth arc from the 8th Doctor adventures. But from what I've heard, it also features the titular players from this book, as does World Game, hence why I think it takes place within this whole game trilogy, as I like to call it, as that also features the players, and it's also written by Terrance Dicks as well. Yes, that I know that's not definitely the continuity of the game trilogy. I mean, fuck, apparently this book is a prequel to Time Worm, Exodus, and a sequel to Blood Harvest as well. Bloody hell, did Terrance Dicks transform into Craig Hinton for this novel or something? Really seems like it. But that is just my assumption of what it looks like from this point on, or point in on it, and hopefully it helps a bit if you're confused about the book or interested in venturing into it. Which you probably are if you're a fan of the War Games, and as you probably will expect, yes, experienced the War Games before this. Considering that this book is so heavy in continuity, I would have actually published Shadow in the Glass as a 50th anniversary reprint instead of this, and published this and World Game as history reprints instead of what we were given with Shadow and Roundheads. So continuity wise, it's like fucking Pandora's box. I will say that Terrance Dicks did an excellent job at that aspect for this book, which weirdly enough leads to a problem with it for me. If you've seen my review on his Target novelisation adaptation of The Invasion of Time, you will know that I felt that Terrance did an okay job. It came across to me as if Terrance didn't really care for the first 4 parts and cared a lot for the 5th and 6th of the original story. That resulted in the respective parts in that story feeling average and even borderline amazing. It's a similar story here. It feels like Terrance cared more about the continuity of what he was setting up rather than a story. I still got the impression that he did care about the story part, as that is pretty good. It just feels like his heart laid with continuity and trying to set up with what he was trying to create with the game trilogy, as I call it. To me, the events of what happened non-continuity wise were very good. However, they just could have been very much more excitingly realised and a lot more beefier. The opening 80 pages approximately are set in 1899 with the Boer War, are a gripping and bleak section of the book which Dicks marvellously recreates. It is here that the 6th Doctor and Peri meet Churchill for the first time in this book. It then nicely segues into a 50-page short story, which I like to nickname the War Games B, which I also talked about earlier, with the 6th Doctor showing Peri an adventure he had in his second incarnation, that iteration of which also meets Churchill in this adventure. It is after this, for the rest of the book, that the 6th Doctor and Peri meet Churchill once again in the mid-1930s, which is when the main part of the book starts. Here suspicion is aroused when they encounter an assassin trying to shoot Churchill, which is the very same assassin as to the one they encountered back in 1899, trying to carry out the very same task during the Boer War, and with that I will say no more on the plot. One other thing I'd like to quickly mention about the book is that the characters are great, with the two main characters in this book, the Sixth Doctor and Perry, being absolutely excellent, and all three incarnations of the time points of Churchill being solid, as well as the Second Doctor and unnameable characters from the War Games B, because spoilers. I can very easily compare this Doctor Who book to the War Games, with it being divided up into sections and having a lot of war elements to it. However, I will say that is basically the story, but with a lot more war politics than science fiction, which for me personally does lead the book to be a bit tiresome and patience testing, simply because I felt that those war politics, or simply because war politics are something that I do like when they're done in a very interesting way, which they were with Dalek's Master Plan and the War Games, but here they just weren't anything exciting or vibrant for me personally. Speaking of its sections, the War Games B, in my opinion, is a fantastic short story. I like how Terence managed to glide into this mini-adventure from the Boer War to this, then from this into the 1930s section of the novel, with it making contextual sense at the same time. An interesting story that utilises the Second Doctor, the unnameable characters, because spoilers, and Churchill brilliantly, and is something that I personally give an 8 out of 10. It's absolutely great. The book overall acts as a great continuation for the game trilogy, but as I did say, the final 180 pages could have been a lot beefier. The players themselves don't get a lot of time, as I imagine that Terence is using them as a key point and thread to the entire arc, and I would say that he is, or guess that he is leaving them to be explained in another book like Endgame, or I would even most likely say World Game, as that's sort of the end of the trilogy, as I would say, as this is a prequel to all of it, even though it's set like right at the end of it, and I would say that World Game is most likely a definitive finale for the trilogy, from what I can guess out from this point on, with reading the entire trilogy and whatnot. Backed up by the fact that one of them actually says to the Doctor's face that they will meet him again, whilst alluding to the possibility that they will meet him in a different incarnation at the same time. Overall, this is a bold, daring and ambitious undertaking for Terence Dicks that I would rate a 7 out of 10. Definitely some good stuff to it, especially the War Games B, and it does act as well as part of an arc, but in my personal opinion this is nothing really outstanding overall.